Yep.
So hello everyone and welcome. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Alicia Saint. I'm on the ICF board and I lead the annual awards program for the ICF Toronto chapter. So I've invited this panel here today to give you the opportunity to ask anything and everything about Prism. And so we've got Janet Emmett, hi Janet, and Dominic Scapidi, who are both our 2020 Prism Award winners. And Janet and Dominic worked on MLSC, and Dominic led a coaching program with Lindt Chocolate. And so they've got lots of experience to share with you. As well, we have Ralph Cochran. He's with us. He was on the judging panel last year, and he will be on our judging panel this year. So he will give you some tips and insights on what sort of excellence looks like when you're thinking about your Prism nomination, and any other questions that you might have, either from a coaching perspective, from a judging perspective, from the nomination form. We're here to try and answer all of your questions. Also, someone had asked for lessons learned, so Janet and Dominic are both ready to share some insights and tips as well on their experience. And like I said, this program this webinar is all about you. So we have a couple of slides. We'd actually prefer not to use any slides and just open it up to lots of Q&A. We will have this as a backup that we will post for resources. We will also use our time together today to add to this. So if there are things that you're really wanting to learn more about, then we'll make sure it gets captured in this presentation and that it's posted after our webinar, in 48 or 72 hours or so, to make sure that you have all the resources that you need. Okay, so with that, maybe we will go to Janet. Is there a bunch of questions right now, or should we go into the criteria?
No, let's just repeat for anyone who has just signed on. We would love to see in the chat. So here's your coaching question. When you when you exit from this Zoom meeting, what are you hoping to get from this meeting? That's what we really want to know in the chat. And we will for sure attempt to address everything that shows up in the chat. So get in there and type that up. And in the meantime, we can share with you the categories and the criteria because that's already come up. So what do you want from this Zoom meeting? Just let us know.
Right. Can I, I'm really pleased to see, I had no idea, that it's really cool to see also that there's Carolyn Conlon and Marge Bussey that are on this program, and they have actually been involved with multiple global Prism Awards with different organizations, and the program that we actually did with MLSC was the Essential Impact Accelerator program, which they obviously that's the program that they have. So I'm glad that they're on too, so they can that there's even a global perspective around Prism could be here. I mean, I know we're Toronto and we're talking about that, but it's always good to understand that context as well.
Awesome. Welcome. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So any global questions, I'll send your way. Great. Well, thank you. Welcome, everyone. Everything on your agenda would be useful. Okay, that's great.
Excellent.
Set up tracking plan for measuring outcomes and results of a coaching engagement. Awesome. We're going to talk about that. All right. So I'll just kick us off. So just to set the stage, Prism actually started, was actually started by ICF Toronto. It's now a global award done with ICF, but it started right here in Toronto. And it's to really recognize and celebrate great coaching and great coaches that's happening all around us in organizations. And you can see when we say organizations, right? It's anything from large, over 500, right down to not-for-profit. And so it really captures what we like to think of as almost any kind of definition of organization that you can think of. So it is broad and it is open to all different industries. There's no limitation on industries. And obviously it falls into each of these categories when you submit your nominations. Okay. Any questions on that? Clear as mud. Okay, perfect.
If you're working with an organization, there is a Prism Award available.
Right. There's an opportunity. Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay, we'll go to the next slide. Is that what we want to do?
Yeah.
Okay. If I can make it work, why won't it move forward? There we go.
Okay. And so who's eligible or what's the criteria? An active chapter member in good standing with our Toronto chapter, ICF credential holder, and the credential holder must have delivered coaching in the organization either as an external or internal coach. So either works, right? You don't have to necessarily be an external coach. If you're an internal coach and you see some great coaching projects and programs happening, let's hear about them. Submit your nomination. And the ICF credential holder must be an accredited coach, an HR professional, or a talent development professional. So lots of different ways that you can nominate for the Prism Award. All right.
So Ralph, do you want to share the tips from the Prism committee?
Yeah, sure. We went around and go, what makes a good application for it? And so, if you sort of think with the end in mind, I go back to that Stephen Covey quote is, this is about, the ICF and this whole initiative is about creating excellence in coaching, right? And the Prism Award is a way to celebrate that. So as an applicant, as someone who's trying to promote this initiative that you're working on, you need to think about what is excellence to you and how are people measuring it, right? So, we want to have, as someone on the criteria, I'd rather have a lot of more applicants than very few, right? Because we're trying to generate a lot of interest in this, and we're trying to generate a culture of excellence. So by being, engaged in having an application and thinking about that when you actually engage in a program with a client, it helps us all get better, right? What are they looking to achieve? So it really is about things as simple as, being an ICF member, making sure you're a member of the chapter, right? Follow the guidelines that are written into the application. So they're lengthy, but they're very clear, and there's actually some examples. But the thing that we wanted to land on is, how do you demonstrate value to the client? So, and really starting almost before you start the initiative. So, if you've already begun an initiative and you don't really have a lot of stats or haven't thought about it, are there ways that you could go back? Or the next time you come up with an idea or a program, start the program there. Start the program with what are the metrics that we're going to measure? How will we demonstrate value, right? How will the business or the organization be able to go, yes, you know what? Not everyone understands coaching. It's kind of, it's kind of out there. It's sort of a cloud sometimes, but because we did this, we were able to contribute at some degree to this result. And there's a lot of ways that can be done. So, so that would be one of the things that we are really trying to measure, because as someone who, I don't see the name of the organization, I don't know who participated in it, other than the information is provided. So I can't lead off of assumptions or a good brand or a good history. I can only take the information from what has been provided. And if there isn't a lot of depth of information that's really clearly answers the questions in a meaningful way, it's hard to us to rank it. I'd also give you to think about, hopefully as we get, as we start to do more and more of this and there's more receptivity of this, is that you are competing against other groups. So think about all the data that you could provide that would show value, right? And that would it be comparable or even better than another program. So think about that. Think about in the context of what is the problem, what was the action, what was the result, and any types of measures. And I think you know, Dominic and others, we had a really interesting conversation earlier this week. It's like ask the client like to be engaged in this process or actually lead this process. What value do they want to create? We don't, as coaches, don't need to create metrics of measurement, but we can work with the client to be more aware of what works in their business and what's important for them. As I said, all the information about the company, the name of the company, and all the sort of documents, sort of context pieces are removed from the applications when we see it. So it really has to have a lot of really good information as far as what was the program, how did it work, did we stick to the alignment, those types of things. And I would encourage you to think about if you're interested in submitting an application for this award. It is a bit of a long process, but it is because we're trying to really instill excellence. And what does that mean? What does it mean for us as a community, as a profession, right? So it's important that these awards have merit and they're well measured, and know that some of the recent nominations, some of the recent winners, it wasn't the first time they submitted that they actually were able to win, right? So some of this is a learning process for us as coaches to build this sort of the strength in our applications and the work. And I'd encourage you to, as you think about if I wanted to do this with the organization, or if I want to be able to do this for all of my clients, if I have this in mind with every initiative that I start with, know that there's a lot of resources. So there are webinars available. I ask you to reach out and ask. We can contact Kim. And there's a lot of past winners and past judges that be more than willing to help you think through the information you'd need to provide and how you would need to structure your engagement so that it demonstrates excellence and that it would actually be a good contender for the Prism Award.
Yeah, so just to add to what Ralph just shared, new this year, we're going to create an advisory board, for lack of a better word, but an advisory team of past winners, coaches, and judges. And I'm just in the process right now of contacting those people. And so ideally within the next week or two, on the ICF Toronto Awards page, you can go there and you'll see a list and contact info for people that are willing to work with you to help you to put together your submission or answer any further questions you have. Again, whether it's from a judging perspective or a coaching perspective or both. You know, for example, Dominic Scafidi has been both a coach and a judge. So just know that those resources will be available to you, and feel free to use them to help you.
Yeah, so I think Dominic and I, around lessons learned, I've stopped the screen sharing, so we're hoping to open it up to the coaching community here to really have more of a discussion. There's a couple more slides, we'll show them to you, but we'd really just like to get your questions. You know the criteria, you know about the types of organizations, and really this is about supporting you to think about if you do a nomination for the Prism Award, you're actually going to be creating a great coaching engagement and getting outcomes for organizations. So part of this is, it's not, it's about the organization you're working with and supporting them to have coaching excellence and to get results. So there's a couple of questions in the chat, Dominic, so let's just open it up first. Before we say anything, what else is on your mind? And you can come off mute.
One of the questions, just as we're waiting, that I caught in the chat so far that we haven't answered was the timelines. Mm-hmm. So I can quickly answer that. So the nominations are now open. So if you go to the ICF Toronto Awards, the ICF Toronto website, you'll see awards page. All the nomination forms are up there, they're posted, they're ready to go. So it's open, and then it closes January 31st. So you have from now until January 31st to get your application in.
Mhm.
So I just want to thank you, Vicki, for asking that question.
Yeah. And we have a question from Al about sharing a winning nomination form if the confidential information is redacted. So do you want to address that, Alicia, or do you want me to share something on that?
Sure, Janet, because I asked you that question. If we could
So
do it.
Al, this has come up. This recently came up. One of the concerns I personally have about sharing the nomination form is that a lot of the stories that we share in nomination forms are done under confidentiality while we are coaching within organizations. So part of keeping our ICF credential and sharing confidential information, yes, we know it's to support coaches, but some of those stories, quantifiable measures, the problems that the organizations are sharing are quite confidential. So my concern is you'd end up getting a nomination form that's really blacked out, if we really wanted to be true to confidentiality. There are, however, case studies that I think are extremely helpful to you that would support you in writing a winning nomination. If you go to ICF Global, Essential Impact has one on Rogers Communications that was a winner several years ago. The most recent winners all have case studies. I have written a case study on the MLSE experience that will get posted on the Toronto ICF website. So I think those case studies talk about measures. They talk about the problem that was trying to be solved through coaching. And I think you would get enough insight from those case studies to support you to write a very strong nomination form. So Al, I hope that answers your question, but we are concerned about confidentiality in terms of sharing nomination forms.
I think the other thing in addition, as you get going, like, because you'll find these case studies and things around that. So, but as you get going and you start doing your nomination, Alicia spoke about that ICF Toronto will have a group that you can reach out to, mentor coaches like that. And so, we'll be able to, you can call us in and then we'll kind of say, well, this is a little weak in this area and you could, go get more info here, or here's how you should beef this up. So you could get some access that way to maybe some insights and maybe what else to do. That could be helpful as well. Again, all those sort of mentor coaches, they've either won Prism Award, been on the judging panel, so really good familiarity with how this works.
Yeah, and that's a new initiative this year that we've never had before. So great new resource available to us as coaches.
Yeah. We had a question from Barb. She asked about a tracking plan for measuring outcomes with an organization.
Yeah. So why don't I turn the share screen back on, and we've got a couple of slides related to that. Okay, so just give me a second here. I'm going to scroll down to the slides. So here is an example, just a second, at Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, where Dominic and I were both lead coaches in this particular project. So with Essential Impact. So one of the things, now this was a 3-year project. Keep in mind, this is a 3-year project. So it was a long initiative. So when it came to tracking outcomes, what Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment wanted to solve through coaching was they really wanted to tie coaching to a couple of pillars in their new strategic plan. And the main pillar they wanted to tie coaching to was to be able to support extraordinary fan experience. Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, for those of you who may not know the MLSE acronym, they are the premier sports owners of Toronto's 4 major sports franchises. So now they own the Argonauts, the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Raptors, go Raptors, and also the Toronto FC, as well as all of the farm teams that feed into those. So a number of other sports teams, and then of course, entertainment. So rock concerts, speakers. So one of the things they wanted to do was tie everything to creating extraordinary fan experience, and they wanted to build leaders, very young age group working at Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. So along the bottom of this slide, you see some of the key outcomes that were achieved through coaching and measures that we presented. These were actually some of the measures that we recorded in our nomination form. Percentage of the budget, in learning and development budget, 37% of the alumni of the coaching program were promoted in less than 3 years. So part of what MLSC wanted to do was fill that leadership pipeline, and they definitely were able to do that. So I was talking to you about extraordinary fan experience, a 10% increase in fan scores around their experience at Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment over 3 years, and less escalation of complaints, which was important to them. Ralph talked about as much as you can in your nomination is to talk about ICF credentials, standards, competencies. So in our case, at Essential Impact, our coaching program is an ICF accredited learning program. So there were 4,500 hours of ICF certified training. We also, through coaching high performance sales individuals within MLSC, we got a 12% growth in ticket sales through that small group of 26 leaders. And then 85% of their total leadership group completed 16 hours of ACSTH coaching programs. So that's, on the ICF. So the more that the programs are, you don't have to have, by the way, an ICF approved learning program to win a Prism Award. Let's make that really clear. Dominic has won an award without having, an ICF accredited program. So I want to make that clear. It does not have to be approved through ICF. So just any reactions to that before I show you another slide? Questions, comments, thoughts?
Barb, does that answer the question you had?
Yes, thank you. And was also interested in, I guess, even whether it was like from a logistics point of view, is it tracked on an Excel spreadsheet? Because 3 years is a long time to record and make sure there's the due diligence to, to be able to regularly see the trends.
Yeah, so Barb, glad you asked that question, because I think there's a myth we want to bust here. Okay, so let's just go to this next slide. I want to bust a myth. I want to bust a myth that it's you, the coach, the coaching company, that's figuring out all this tracking. What you're really doing as a lead coach embedded within the organization is you're working with the human resources department. In our case, our partner was the Senior Vice President of Human Resources, the VP of Learning and Development, and the Learning and Development Manager. So we were really working with 3 people. And what you're doing as the coach is influencing the measurement that's already going on within the organization. Most organizations are already doing a lot of measurement. So all you're doing is influencing how coaching ties to the measurement they're already doing, or adding something within their measurement process. So for example, most of the organizations I work with these days are doing engagement surveys. So what you can do is find out what the engagement scores are before you start, check what questions are specifically related to coaching. So for example, under quantitative measures here for return on investment, I have at MLSC, the question in their engagement survey was, my supervisor provides me with these supports and coaching I need to be successful in my role. It was already there. So all we did was track it over 3 years to see how it changed. So I just want to, it's not that you, the coach, are trying to create big spreadsheets and, doing all this measurement yourself. You're linking with the human resources department, your executive sponsor, your client, to support them to figure out what they can measure and how they can do it. And what I've got here for you is just to support you is to think about, there's lots of quantitative measures of return on investment of coaching, which we see on the left side, but there's also qualitative measures. And the qualitative measures are quite easy to set up if they don't exist.
Thanks so much, Janet. And for me, it's a reminder, where there are existing metrics within the organization or measures, use those. Like
you don't
the wheel. Yeah.
You don't have to reinvent. There's lots you can do with what probably already exists in the organization. And here's some examples of the kinds of things you could ask about. or potentially simply track, like number of coach training hours delivered is very easy for you to track during the length of your project. And then leader testimonials, you know, getting those during the course of your project. And what MLSE did was they created a website, like an internal portal workspace, where they had leaders make testimonials over the 3 years around coaching. So we had easy access to that. Dominic, do you want to add to anything around measurement?
Yeah, so maybe we can stop broadcasting, and
Yeah.
then the all of those, that's going to be on that resource PowerPoint, so that you can you have all these numbers, or at least stats. I think I'll just back up a little bit, because Barb brought up the point. I see she in the chat, she said, oh, great reminder about the business tracking results. And so from a context for me, this is and I think what I would reinforce here is, this is what you're good at. This is a coaching skill. You're trained in this, and you know how to do this in a coaching conversation, because you, in a coaching conversation, start that conversation and you get a coaching agreement, and you right away begin to talk in that conversation about what does value look like from this conversation, right? So don't, because I think there's something about these metric things that sounds like it's like not coaching. Oh, damn, now I got to do that stuff. I thought that's why I became a coach, because I don't like doing that. Right? So, but I just want to bring it as it's part of this. You actually already have that competency. And so now what you're doing is you are coaching, you're actually embodying coaching, even from the moment you begin talking to the organization, because you're embodying it. You're really being able to talk about, you know, so what has you want to bring coaching in? What's your hopes for this? If this turns out to be really well, like kind of what difference does it make? How would you know it made a difference? Who would notice it made any difference? What exactly would they notice if it made a difference? And so then those types of questions, the organization starts to talk to you. And what are you doing? Well, you do what you do as a coach. Another competency, you listen. So you're listening, because the organization's going to tell you. They're going to say, well, we would know there was a difference because people wouldn't leave. They like, our turnover is bad and it wouldn't be so bad, right? Well, we would know that this made any difference because the engagement scores would go up. Oh, the engagement scores. Yeah, because we run those quarterly, or we run the, right? So this is coaching. The Prism Award is not like this other thing. It is coaching. And if you look from that mindset, what it will do is create for you a way of thinking about how to engage with this organization and basically make this thing work so it's world-class award winning. Right? And here's the thing. I remember saying at one of these things where I said, listen, you should always start, if you're going to start a program, you start to win the Prism Award. And that's you doing this program to win the Prism Award. And it's just not about the Prism Award. It's just not about the Prism Award. Because what happens is the Prism Award, when you look at the criteria and you're looking at what does it take to win it, once you get this mindset, what happens is you will now be creating a program, collaborating with your client for a program. This is going to be an amazing program. And frankly, at the end of the day, who cares whether you win the Prism Award? What difference does that make anyway? Your program is going to be so much better because you've taken that mindset, because Prism is about coaching excellence, right? And yeah.
Yeah. I think that's just one of the messages we want to share, is that it's all about the mindset you go into as you engage in your coaching agreement, in your coaching contract. And that if you have this idea of being an embedded coach with your executive sponsor, it's all about it isn't actually about you. It's about the organization. It's about them strengthening and getting the results that they want. So, and hey, if they win the award, you get an award too, but it's a partnership. And so it's all about how you partner with the organization right off the top. So reactions to that, thoughts? We want to demystify this process.
To use Jennifer Paler, if anyone watched, attended the conference, Jennifer Paler talked about hacking, right? We want to hack away at Prism and demystify it so that folks feel much more comfortable about what is it, how to apply for it. Most importantly, I think what Jen and Dominic just said, and I know Ralph's talked about it as well, is it's about elevating all of our coaching engagements, the work that we're doing, the results that we're delivering, right? Because, you know, ideally we would love every organization in the world to use coaching in some form or fashion, right, within their business to deliver outcomes. And so I think that's really what Prism helps with, is quantifying that, right?
Yeah.
What are the results? Here is the absolute undeniable truth about what coaching does to change organizations, to support leaders, to create, you know, winning cultures, and on and on. So.
Yeah. And I think, you know, it's important that you think of this as a story that needs to be told. So, you know, lesson learned, we actually applied twice for the MLSE nomination. We didn't win the first time round. And it was because we didn't do a good enough job telling the story, and that needed to be told. So I think, and it wasn't written, the first go round wasn't written enough from a coaching perspective. It was more like an organizational kind of perspective. So I'd say that would be a lesson learned for sure. So tell the coaching story, like the journey of who were the characters, where were they going, what did they need to achieve, you know, what was the big shining prize that they were trying to achieve in the story, and how they got there, and what were the results. It's like you're writing a narrative. When you go into those text boxes, and believe me, the word count is like, there is limitations on how many words you can put in there, and that tripped us up the first go round, to be honest, because we struggled with the word count. We wanted to tell a lot of things, and then we cut back and cut back and cut back. So just go tell the story, be really specific about the characters, the journey they're on, what they're trying to achieve, and what the big prize is at the end. And that will support you to have a winning nomination. Have some measurables, as Ralph has said, but don't feel like, you know, you have to have 50 measures. We just want to know that coaching has made a difference. And how do you know some proof points, evidence points of how you know coaching made a difference for those heroes and characters in that story to get to that end of the journey where they wanted to go.
I would just add, that's a really good point, because as someone who reads the application, if it's not well thought out, you see repetition of the same comments again and again, and it just takes away from the quality of the narrative, right, of the story, because everybody wants to be engaged in something. So even as a judge, you wanna feel good about what actually happened. And if you don't understand the story and it just looks like a lot of filling in the blanks, it loses its umph, you know, like it loses its power. And we want these stories to be told, right? But so to your point, they've got to be good stories, and they've got to be watertight. They've got to be good business cases to go, this is what excellent looks like. We want to promote this. So excellent point. Thank you.
And I don't know, like Ralph can answer this more than I can, but I will tell you that we let the client write a lot of the first application, the first time. So the story was more from the executive sponsor. Second time around, the story came from the coach. And I feel like the story got stronger when it came from the coach. But I'm just putting that out there. So you obviously want to collaborate with your client in doing this application process. I think that's really important. But don't underestimate the value of how you can share the coaching journey as a coach, and let that be reflected through your application and your nomination. So I'm just saying that something else I learned through the process was whose voice is it in writing the application, the nomination form.
Al, you had a question. Do you want to come off mute and ask your question?
Yeah, no, this is a great session. I was just wondering whether a nonprofit organization like a membership-based group, i.e. Rotary International, whether that would qualify as a potential candidate for Prism, or does it have to be strictly like a nonprofit?
That is a nonprofit. Any Rotary club, any service club is a nonprofit.
Okay, thank you.
We have a category for that.
Yeah, that sounds interesting, Al. I think you could get creative with that one. And Rotary would have like such a big impact.
Yeah, well,
Cool.
we're trying to this is kind of a premature comment, but we're trying to develop I'm pretty heavily involved in Rotary, and we're trying to develop a coaching culture within Rotary International.
Wow.
Great.
on a global scale is the dream. And so we got a pilot project running now, and I think Dominic and Ralph and everybody was talking about, we have to change the conversations that we're having to engage and retain and all the stuff you're talking about. So, I think Dominic, you said like start every project, like, you want to go after a Prism. You might not get there, but at least it's the journey. So it's just kind of going on in the back of my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it sounds like an excellent candidate. Maybe this, and is all about how you set it up. And it sounds like you're in the beginning of it. So perfect timing for you.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
Anyone else we want to share some resources with you, but we really want to answer your questions. Like, I'd be curious, how many of you are thinking about applying for Prism for 2021? How many of you are thinking of submitting a nomination right now? You can show us your hand or you can raise your hand through the symbols. How many of you are thinking about it?
Cool.
Okay, Lucy,
I have
great.
a question. Yeah, I put together an ROI study a few years ago, and it was working with an individual who hired me as an individual, but within the organization, but she wasn't supported by the organization for coaching, and we worked for about 9 months, and so she had personal as well as professional results, and there was an ROI in there. And I was wondering, like, is that something you'd be looking for? It's not organizational wide, but it had organizational impact through an individual who brought me in out of her own accord. Just some thoughts on that.
Brought you in as a coach? I just want to clarify that part.
Yes, she brought me in as a coach.
Okay.
We worked on personal and professional goals, business goals. And there was a performance goal that she set out. She wasn't supported by the organization, meaning that it was paid by her.
Right.
And she eventually left that organization. It wasn't, long story short, it was successful. And it was through a ripple effect of one person. It wasn't an organization-wide, big team culture thing. It was an impact on one individual. And I wondered, what's the scope in the sense of Prism Awards and how you see.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Good question.
Yeah, that's helpful to clarify. So I think Alicia and Ralph should probably answer that question.
Yeah. Well, we could probably also answer just by the examples of them, right? I mean,
Yeah.
in terms of because when you look at, if you go through and you look at what's won, right? And when I was on the judging panel and leading the judging panel, so the way that this looks at is really a distinction between the individual coaching that we're doing and a kind of an intervention that is bringing coaching culture, making a change. So in yours, the challenge becomes, how do you find out how, that intervention changed, you know, the leader's ability to coach and what kind of impact that had with other leaders and their ability to coach. So that would be the challenge in there, because the intervention isn't going out that way. Yeah. And it kind of leads to this part about, because I've been involved in these in different ways, and, you know, the thing with the essential impact on MLSC, and they know how to win global awards, right? So it's a real machine there for how to do this. And
Get on them.
compared to the ones I did, which I was like, I'm on my own, right? I'm on my own trying to like figure this out. And in those, so you again, because the numbers we showed you and sort of the stats we showed you were an MLSC one, but don't be overwhelmed, because even on the others, like me with an individual program and being able to do that, you get creative in is, I mean, we can get some metrics because, you know, in talking to the client, we'll know what the client's using. So good, that gets me like 3, right? So I'll have engagement scores, I'll have SATs, like whatever, right? But then for the other ones, even as simple, and I do now, right, as out of the learning, is I build it into the program so that there's before and after surveying. And so the questions will get me the result, right? Like it'll tell me that managers are coaching more today than they were before. It will tell me their level of confidence in difficult conversations has gone up compared to like, so do you see what I mean? Once I find out, and then I build it like that. So basically, as I'm doing the program, it's spitting out numbers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's all about how you start, and you can easily do a Survey Monkey with 5 questions. And they're qualitative questions about statements. Rate your agreement with this statement. My manager offers me enough coaching supports on a day-to-day basis, or whatever your words are. I feel more confident to make decisions. So an agreement scale, you do that at the beginning of your engagement on a Survey Monkey, you do it in the middle, and you do it at the end. You are going to have measures. You are going to see changes, and that's evidence. That's evidence. So they can be qualitative statements that people share an agreement scale with. So it's not too hard to set up.
That's really helpful. I think what I did was more of the self-assessment. What you're speaking to there is what was the impact on her team, because she was managing a team, is involving the team in terms of reporting back what the difference was for them at the beginning and the middle, at the end of that engagement. Yeah. And that's how I can see myself doing this differently next time around. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm finding this really helpful. I'm building an in-house coaching program at my company, and I've been at it for a year and a half, and we're, we've doubled in size in terms of the employees, and I'm hiring other coaches to work with me. And I'm not super concerned about the Prism Award. I'm more concerned about how do I prove the impact to the business and to our CEO and sort of explain the business case. So
beautiful.
I'm really interested to work with like this group, or however I can kind of have a mentor or something to help me frame it up and make sure I'm investing my energy in the right places, to see, in the year to come, what the impact is.
Yeah. And usually, I mean, coaching is all about getting results. So it is important to show that that's happening. And we know there's a couple of key results is if engagement can go up, right? Because here's what we know. If staff are more highly engaged, they will deliver, if they're in a customer-driven organization, they will deliver stronger customer results. So where there's links to results, so I really enjoy working in customer-driven organizations, which is why MLSC was so a good fit for me, because I'm really passionate about that. So wherever you can drive, make those links around customer satisfaction changing, but employee engagement is number 1, then turnover going down. You can measure, your HR department's probably already measuring turnover, right? And then leadership pipeline. How is this leadership development activity supporting leaders to move up and move forward in the organization? So there's always key results we're trying to get, and revenue. Revenue is harder to measure, but there are ways to do it as well.
Yeah, no, that's helpful, because I always get people saying like, wow, it was so helpful in allowing me to get the promotion, and like people are anecdotally giving feedback, and twice a year they have to respond to a Survey Monkey just saying like, are you working with our in-house coaches? Is it helping you? Would you recommend it? But I think what I'm hearing is I need to flesh that out further. And with some of the other like leadership development programs we're doing, kind of do the before, during, and after, so that we have the data. Yeah.
Yeah. And tie it to what you're trying to develop in your leaders.
Yeah.
And you're a perfect example of what we're trying to create, right?
Yeah.
This isn't necessarily about an award. This is about a culture of excellence, right? And then engaging past winners, judges, whatever, into when you're creating a program for yourself to leverage this framework, like what's been doing is thinking about, how do I do that? What stakeholders do I need to engage internally that this has an impact on, or that will want to see some sort of result for themselves to ingrain this as a cultural thing we need to do. So those, back to Dominic, I need to go out and ask them questions like, what's important? What can we measure that would, and then is it a one-to-one relationship of outcome? Probably not. Is there a lean in on it? Could there be some sort of credit, a given, so they could see that this has benefit for them as well, right? I think that's what this is all about creating, right? Like, how do we think more holistically? How does the business benefit and be able to demonstrate and have people be advocates for this work, right? Because there was benefit, as opposed to, I think it's a good idea, not really sure how it works, but let's just throw some money at it and see what happens.
Well, yeah, and I'm making a case to hire like 3 more coaches next year to support our growth, and they're like, yeah, we get it, it's working, but like, what are the facts? When the board's asking, like, what do we say? So
and you want to be able to go to the board and go, this, and I have stakeholders that will back me up because they actually believe this, and this is what they've come to say was been a benefit from them. So and in lean times, these things tend to come up in question, like, do we really need to spend money on this? It's like, if you have great advocates, right, and great stakeholder engagement, they'll go, yeah, this is really critical.
I think, just a reminder to everybody, tying it back to the original purpose of why, like at Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, 70%, think about that, 70% of the training and development budget went to coach training. Now, that was a big risk for them. That was a big risk for them to, for 3 years, by the way, make 70% of their training and development budget for coaching. So they needed to see those results. What was the problem we were trying to solve? We have at Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment 750 full-time staff and over 3,500 part-time staff who could be working 30 hours a week, by the way. So they're not just casual, they can be working many hours. So part of what they needed to do was to push responsibility down in the organization, create a coach approach to leadership, to empower those part-timers who might only work 3 days a week to feel like they had autonomy and decision-making authority on the floor during each and every game and each and every event. And so when they saw 37% of their leaders were promoted over 3 years, that gave good evidence of the support for the budgetary expense. Now, that's not going to happen this year or next year. They are going to move on to some other things. But this is what you want to do, is tie it to be really uber clear as a coach on that original purpose for the coaching. Let's call it an intervention. Maybe that's not the right word, but for the coaching partnership. Yeah. We haven't heard much from Mark and Ingrid. Just wondering if you two have any comments or questions.
Thank you. I'm actually my first time joining. It's Ingrid. I'm learning today, so I'm just listening to the conversation and also absorbing the information. So thank you, but that's why you haven't heard a lot from me today.
Okay, just wanted to check in. Mark, anything from you that might be helpful for you?
Hello. Just had a quick question. I mean, we've talked about the duration, MLSE being 3 years, but what about other projects? What are some of past winners, sort of minimum, maximum durations that these projects have been?
Yeah,
Thank you.
question. Great question. Dominic, you can probably speak to that a bit.
Yeah, these, I think the judging criteria is at least 1 year, if I remember that when I was doing it, it was. So that the 1 year for sure. So, you know, you get enough runway with it so that then you're able to show something. And yeah, so, and I've put them forward, you know, of the 4 of them, right, that I put them forward, some very close to the 1 year. So I've been like right at 1 year, and I'm happy with what I got, and I can see the numbers and all that. And I can already tell the story is good. And so then I just went for it. And then some you just wait a little longer, like 1.5 years or whatever it is. And a little bit's just the timing too. Like I could just tell, you know, that it's a little early to put one now. I think I'm gonna wait for the next, right? So I can just kind of look at what's happening and see if there's enough with it.
Oh, so let me just follow up on that if I could. So are you suggesting, did the, Dominic, in the case you just discussed, the project concluded after 1 year, but because they continue to measure and they have all the metrics within the organization, you could track for the next 6 months what was happening, and you could use those results to say, hey, you know, even better results?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. And in my case in that particular was continued interventions. Like, in other words, it started with a big launch, and then there was workshops, then there were some follow-up pieces, then there were other things going on. So like there was a continuation, not in the same scale.
Yeah.
But I wanted and waited for that. We did the same, like MLSC was like that, where yes, there was workshops, yes, there was, but then there was follow-up sustainment sessions. And these sustainment sessions were like 2-hour sessions where we'd go in and be doing these things. So there's so many ways that we were in there doing different things. So it's a matter of, okay, when are you going to cut it off now and put together the Prism Award, like the application, right? You could cut it at any point, see what the numbers are, and let's submit.
Mm-hmm. But this also speaks to how you set up your engagements, because try to set up longitudinal engagements, because sustainment is a big part of supporting all the work you do up front when you launch to keep it going. So if you can, you know, get sustainment as part of your contract, that's going to create more results for the organization as well and create more excellence.
And just if I touch on one thing that I noticed too, and as Vicki was talking, and I don't know if this is real or not, but as coaches, we also always, I think, have to be present to this from an energy perspective. It's just be careful not to work too hard. Because if you start to notice that you're working really hard, where am I? Oh, I need these metrics, and I gotta have metrics and transition metrics, something metric, whatever. Okay, you sound like, you know, if you start sounding like that, boy, sounds like you're working harder than the client here. You're a coach, remember? Coaches are generally lazy, right? You be lazy, because if you're lazy, the client steps up and works harder, right? So when I'm looking to how do I prove the value, I don't want to work too hard. I want to instead be more interested in how will they perceive value? What do they see as value? I'll have those conversations instead before I go into my own head and research of trying to figure out how to prove this thing. Because if you do it that way, then you're engaging them and you're not kind of running off with stuff, complicated things that in the end you're going to present it. And the client just doesn't care, because that's like kind of coaching stats, and the client doesn't care. Right?
I think, Dominic, to your point, like the metric should be important to the client.
Yeah.
Right. And if you're, to your point, if you're running around trying to create things that are good for you, your focus is on the wrong place.
And you'll know when you present it, because they just won't care. Right? So rather, when they've been there, they're really interested in these numbers you're going to show them. Right? So, yeah.
We've only got a couple minutes left. Alicia, do you want to just share the resources? Should I pop that up on the screen?
Yeah,
Why don't I do that? Okay, so just we want you to know that there's a couple of resources available to you. So just keep in mind this deck is going to be posted, so you're going to be able to see this on the website shortly. Not sure, we might add something else after this webinar, but here are some resources available to you that Alicia will share.
Yeah, so start at the ICF Toronto website. There's an awards page. You can see all the past years. I think there's at least 7 years of history there. There's case studies. There's webinars from over the years. Janet and Dominic and I did a webinar in June of last year, which was talking about raising your game. And we went into a bit more detail on the quantitative and qualitative measures that are important for your coaching engagement. So please check that out. ICF Global has lots of resources, again, lots and lots of case studies. So take a look at that. As we mentioned, I'll be putting together a Prism Advisory Council team, and I will get those names and contacts posted ideally by next week. So please feel free to reach out. Kim Leach is our administrator, and that's her email there. If you have any questions about the nomination form, or you can't find it, or questions like that, she is a great resource. She knows a lot about a lot. And then of course I'm here as well. If you have some questions, you just don't know where to go, please reach out to me. I'm more than happy to help you and kind of get you pointed in the right direction. So thank you to everyone for joining us today. It was really great to have the opportunity to interact and hear your questions and hopefully answer all your questions. Thank you so much to Janet and Dominic and Ralph for your time and your expertise. It's been, I've learned a few things along the way too, so I really, really appreciate it. And please, you know what, reach out. And we want everyone to really step into this. And we'd love to see so many nominations that we have to go into overdrive in order to get through all the nominations. So please don't hesitate. If you have any questions, reach out. We're here to help. So thank you. Thank you to everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Good luck, Vicki.
Yeah,
Awesome.
all the best. All
Send
the
us
best
lots
with
of
your coaching
nominations.
engagements. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Al.
Bye,
Take
Barb.
care.